Good afternoon. My name is Cassie Trewick. I'm one of the admission counselors here at Tulane University School of Public Health and Tropical Medicine. And I have the honor of introducing Dr. Rustin Reed, who will be presenting today's Public Health Discovery Seminar Series titled Locked on Leadership, the Key to Culture Change. And so, Dr. Rustin Reed, I'm going to let you take it away.
Awesome. Thank you, Cassie. And so I was mentioning to Cassie that I have an internet outage in my area and I'm running off my phone's hotspot. So I hope the connection stays stable for us. I am going to turn off my video camera for that reason, just to in hopes that we can at least preserve the audio. So I'm going to do that right now. I am hoping and expecting to have everyone's participation. I think participation really is your way of getting your brain off the couch. That's how we grow, is by trying and failing and doing things. And so I want this to be a very interactive experience for you. Today, the title of the presentation is called Locked on Leadership. And I want to share several things that I've learned in my time in helping companies, really, companies and organizations deal with challenges. And one thing that I've learned throughout this process is that all of these things, these principles apply to your life as well. So it's not just for companies, it's not just for organizations, but it's for each of us as individuals, for us to learn and grow from it. And I think leadership applies to everything really in life. I consider myself a student of leadership. And thank you, Cassie. So I agree. If you have any questions, please drop them in the chat and we'll be sure to answer them. Or if you have any comments, we're going to start with our objectives, some brief objectives. We're going to do some introductions. We're going to talk about leadership, and there will be a reflection exercise here. So I'd like you to reflect and then also to share your thoughts in the chat. We're going to look at some different vision statements. I think it's important for leaders to have a vision of where are we going as a team? Where am I going as an individual? And you'll have some time to reflect and also comment on that. I'm going to ask you for your input there. We're going to do a communication, I'll call it an exercise, but it's a chance for you to get to know yourself a little bit better about your leadership and your communication style. It's a kind of like those personality tests that you may have taken before. This one is focused on communication in the context of leadership. I'm going to talk briefly about the GPS model. I think it's an important model for orienting yourself in life, or myself. I'm also going to talk about the map of motivation. People talk about motivation versus discipline, and I will agree 100% with those who prioritize discipline over motivation, but motivation is still important. And I'm going to share some insights that from a TED Talk that I think is really excellent. Then we will review and answer any questions. In case you're wondering, I will have some pictures from my experience and just some others from Google in here. This one is, that was the last day of the fieldwork for my dissertation. And I'm not going to get into it, but it was a happy day for me to be done with that. Lots of challenges, and we made it through. At the end of this interactive exercise, you should be able to describe 3 to 5 qualities of good and poor leaders. And in the invitation, you probably saw something related to the 3 C's. So I changed the focus here. We are going to briefly mention those, but I think those will mostly come out in this conversation, in this discussion. You'll be able to identify your own style, and we will talk about that with that communication exercise. And then you will also, through the process of today, develop a brief vision statement and SMART goals for yourself, for your career, for your life, in whatever way you'd like to apply that. You will have something. We'll do a basic walkthrough. of that process. Now, I do want to briefly do some introductions, and I would like to know this information about you. I'm going to model what I'm hoping to hear from you. So if you are comfortable, then please share your name. So my name is Rustin Reed, and where you call home. So I am actually from and still currently live in northeastern Arizona. And then life and or career goals. And I've thought a lot about these. I guess these sort of play together often. But lately I've been thinking more about life goals and this quote. I guess that's why I put this quote here from Gandhi. And that is, I've been trying to focus more on, focusing on a word called grow or growth. Focusing on growing, and that doesn't necessarily mean I reach the destination. I'm still on the path, and I'm always on that path, but hopefully I'm growing as a result of all the challenges and the struggles of life. So please, if you're comfortable, include those in the chat. I guess in the Q&A, sorry, in the Q&A then, please. Thank you for sharing that feedback.
Hi guys, try to see if you can try to do it in the chat again. I just tried to fix it. So try to see if you can write something in the chat, but if not, definitely use the Q&A.
All right, well, for those of you who may be typing, please continue typing your response in. I'm going to continue, and I'm sorry if I'm mispronouncing this. Iram from Nigeria, awesome. I've had several students from Nigeria and Kenya over the years. That's great. My goal is to contribute to the eradication of malaria in Nigeria. That is a very worthy goal there. Awesome, thank you. And then we have, and I'm sorry again if I mispronounce Mandashell. Okay, thank you for the help with the pronunciation there, Mandashell. I live in Slidell. Cool. Was raised in Dallas, Texas. That's awesome. And then Shalina, originally from Bangladesh, but living in New Orleans for the last 10 years. A Tulane alum. That's awesome. Currently serving as a faculty member at Xavier. Oh, thank you so much for joining us, Shalina. That is awesome. Then I think we have one in the Q&A. Let's see here. Okay, awesome. So Amos joins us from the Democratic Republic of Congo. That is awesome. Become a highly skilled researcher and public health expert to effect lasting change and improve health outcomes in Africa and beyond. Awesome. That is awesome. Thank you so much for those who shared. That is great. Lots of good goals there. I appreciate that. So I want to paint a little bit of the picture for okay, we have Eden, a general practitioner from Ethiopia. Awesome. That is cool. A lot of good international representation today. A little bit of context for these organizations. So in the past, either as a consultant or as a faculty member with the university, I get sometimes asked to help companies for different reasons. And now the focus here typically is health and safety for us. Okay, we've got more chat. So thank you. You have Ayeni from Nigeria. My career goal is to become a highly skilled researcher in public health, especially in the area of biostatistics. Awesome. That is great. Thank you. So when there's a couple of things to keep in mind. So when an organization asks me or someone like me to come help them, there's a couple of things. So this is an organization that needs help. They are struggling in some way. The other thing that I like to keep in mind is that they recognize that and are not too proud, or I'm not sure what the right word is. That might be part of it. There may be other reasons, but they recognize that and they are willing to ask for help. So those organizations are the ones that I don't worry about as much. Now, obviously, we're going to go and help them, but I'm not as concerned about them, There are many other organizations, private or public, that need help, but they either don't recognize it or they won't ask for help. So these companies are, at least they recognize it and are trying to make it better. And we've asked them, what are what are your problems? What are your challenges? And there are lots of different things. Now, this is specific to these companies, but you can think about in your life, your own challenges. And a lot of the companies talk about not enough time, not enough workers. There is a large either workforce development issue or staff shortage issue for many companies and industries. Not enough equipment, tools, parts, not enough of a lot of different things for them to get the job done. Some other challenges that come up in our discussions include attitudes, generational differences. So a lot of, I'm going to say, quote unquote, with air quotes, old timers. Um, they have certain opinions of the upcoming generations or just different generations. And I agree that there are generational differences, but we're also at least partially a product of our environment, and there are reasons that are driving some of those differences. And so um, sometimes when we get into, you could think of these as focus group discussions or retreats for these companies to hammer out some solutions to their problems. A lot of the discussions turn out to be gripe sessions, is what I'd call them, and complaining does not help. It does not help us address any of the problems. And so that's what we try and focus on with these companies, and also some chain of command issues, people going around the chain of command, sidestepping it, which is a problem. So lots of different problems, lots of different challenges. And just as an example, I have this staircase. It turns into a vicious cycle where you have, let's say you have a workforce shortage. So you don't have enough maintenance crew members to keep to take care of your vehicles. Those get in disrepair, and you also don't have enough people to take care of the roads. So this is, my background is at mine sites, mining companies. So the roads become the condition deteriorates, and then that's going to make your vehicles need more repair, and this process just sort of cycles. You kind of get the sense that the company is circling down the drain, down the toilet. And our goal is to use leadership to reverse that. And sometimes I think maybe we feel in our own lives that we're in that same vicious cycle where one thing leads to another, and it's hard. It's really difficult to turn that around and to create what would be called a virtuous cycle, where you're ascending that staircase rather than descending. So I want you to take a moment, about a minute, and think to yourself of some of the good and bad leaders that you have interacted with in your life. And I think we all know who these people are. If you take just a moment to think about it, even a 4-year-old, I think, can recognize good and bad leaders. So I'm confident you have many good examples of either good or bad leaders in your life. And I want you to think about what made them good or bad leaders. So think about that. And then I'll keep a timer here. After you've had a moment to think, then I'd like to open it up for, I'm going to call it class discussion, but in the chat or Q&A, if you can post some of the qualities that made them either good or bad, that would be great. All right, we're almost to a minute. So at any point you would like to share, feel free to put your thoughts in the chat. What were the qualities that made the good leaders good and the bad leaders bad? Iram says, a good leader knew how to lead by example. Awesome. That is a great point. So a good leader is a role model and exhibits the behavior that they would like their subordinates or their team to follow. You could say they walk they walk the talk, they don't just talk it, or they practice what they preach. Different ways of saying that, but I agree 100%. Good leaders are normally curious. Got lots of chats. This is awesome. Normally curious and often used mixed methods, research techniques before making decisions. Okay, good. So going to consider multiple viewpoints, multiple data points before making a decision. Very important. Kathy says, good active listening, ability to see the big picture and get people on board. Perfect. Yes, yes. Getting ownership from your team. And then bad does not do as they say. So they're focused on themselves and, or I guess, narrow focus in general. And then Eden says, good leader does the responsibilities together with, okay, strive. Thanks, Kathy. Strive for themselves. Yes, they're working to promote themselves and doesn't matter what happens to the team. Good leader does the responsibilities together with the employees. A bad leader simply holds a position and orders employees around. Awesome. Great examples, Eden. A bad leader communicates poorly, arrogantly. Okay, good, good. Perfect. So I'm going to share some thoughts, and if there are other comments, please feel free to include them. So I'll give one example from one of these mining companies. They had some issues. They were still having issues. That's why we were there. But I think they were in a much better place when they asked us to come. So they previously had a CEO who. So this mining company was based in the Intermountain West. The CEO lived in Virginia, I believe, and was rarely on the site. They did some, I guess I'll say, house cleaning. They made some changes at the executive level. They brought in some people from outside. They moved some people up who, they think were in a position to help. And the new CEO, so this was a coal mining company. New CEO was had grown up in that industry essentially because his father was a mine engineer. He was also a mine engineer originally. Okay, I'm going to read another comment. So my life experience with a master's research supervisor allowed me to take charge and all the time, put me in the way all the time. And he always took responsibility whenever the need arises. Okay, good. So ownership is a big, important part of good leadership. Thank you. So the new CEO was probably younger than me. I like to think I'm young. I know it's all relative, but relatively young CEO. And the interesting thing was, as we were doing our training with the supervisors, frontline supervisors, managers, eventually we were with the executive team, but you could tell that this CEO had many of the good qualities that you are all describing. As an example, this CEO would, on occasion, not all the time, but on occasion, would go underground and shovel coal or pull cable or whatever, do the grunt jobs while he was underground, and people noticed. I think that's an example, I guess, of leading by example, and not being arrogant. And some of you mentioned, so does the responsibilities together with the employees, all important things. And I, the biggest C from the three C's, in my opinion, is, and we're not going to cover these formally in our presentation today, but is that you care, And one thing that I like to share with our trainees in the training sessions we would do is that you can be the best. You can have the most skills, the most knowledge. You can be competent at leadership in a lot of different ways. But if it is clear to your team, to your people, that you do not care, then it will not matter. All the rest of those things will not matter. And so it's really important to care. for your team, or if you're thinking about yourself in your life, you need to care. You should care about yourself and your own well-being. You treat yourself like someone that you care about. um, that's important. And so first, I think we have to start out with that we actually care. We have some Q&As people in the Q&As that I've been missing. So thank you, Amos. Okay, and I'm sorry, I'm going to say Taiwo. Sorry, I missed you there. So Amos says, what made good their ability to listen to other people's view and be inclusive, and what made the bad not being able to guide the team and uplift weaker team members. That is a great point. We're about building and growing as we're about building and growing people. And that's something we like to say is no matter if you are in a leadership position, now it has nothing to do with your title, nothing to do with your title. So in a way, we are all in the people business, no matter what you are doing. Assuming you interact with people, then you are in the people business, in addition to whatever your job happens to be. So we will develop our vision statements. We may not quite have time for some of our other exercises today, and that's okay. But I want you to take a look at these examples of vision statements. Some of them may be a little bit outdated because it's been some time since I pulled these. And think about and then share in the chat what you find one you really like and it's your favorite. Then point out, why is this my favorite vision statement of these four? And if you find one that you really dislike. So I want to talk a little bit about some of these while you are all typing in the chat. I want to just share some thoughts here. So one thing that many point out, and I used to have on the next slide, used to have another mining company. Actually, it was a gold mining company not far from Newmont, with a little bit of a different focus, maybe a better example of vision statement. So one thing that people point out often is that here, the first thing that is mentioned, now it does say sustainable mining. That's great. But really, the first thing that it mentions is shareholder returns. And so you can tell that whoever wrote the vision statement for Newmont Mining likely had investors in mind when they wrote that. And it's important for a business to generate revenue, right? If you don't have income, then you don't have a business. And so that's important. At the same time, a lot of people would say, well, maybe these things should have been first. Safety, environmental stewardship, and social responsibility. I think those are valid points. I think it would be important to emphasize those things, but a vision statement can be a little bit more general too. So if you look at Boeing's, for example, now they, in light of some of their recent issues, they're I don't know. I guess I won't save comment, but there sounds good to me. People working together as one global company for aerospace leadership. I like the simplicity of that. The follow through sometimes for organizations leaves something to be desired sometimes. Google is focused on organizing the world's information to make it accessible and useful. I want to point out here that some of these have a little bit of the what are they going to do, and the why. Sometimes they also include the how are they going to do that. You could think of them in different ways like that. It's important for a leader to have a vision of where we are going, what we can become. What can I become? We need to have a vision and use our mind's eye, our imagination to think of where we might be in the future. Okay, thank you, Mandashell. Mandashell likes Google's statement the best there. And I agree. I think it's a pretty good one on this list here. And I just pulled the School of Public Health and Tropical Medicine's vision statement. I like the simplicity. There's pros and cons to being very concise. Optimal health and well-being for all. I like the simplicity there. You might add a little bit of detail, but that's a good one. So here are some more examples. I'll just speak to these briefly. Microsoft says a computer on every desk and in every home. And one of the discussion points on this one is they have the what, but why? Why do we want a computer on every desk and in every home? And in my opinion, why is more important than the what or the how. Why are we doing this in the first place? Disney's is kind of, I guess it's all focused on the why and not the how, to make people happy. And, I think that's, I don't know, again, very concise. I like that. Maybe a little more detail is in order. Yeah, I'm not sure. So this is our IH program. This is my draft vision statement for the IH program. So I have a little bit of the what and the why. And to be honest, I guess I'm reversing these, but some will argue that the what is a little bit more a mission statement and the why is more the vision. I'm not worried about the distinction at this point. Amazon's is pretty good. I like theirs as well. The most customer centric company, where you can find and buy anything basically online. So with those examples in mind, I would like you to craft a vision statement for your team or for yourself. Again, the frame here is a little bit focused on organizations, but think about that for yourself. And this is not necessarily something for you to share, but something for you to keep and help guide you in the next steps that we're going to discuss. And we won't be able to walk through all the upcoming exercises, but we will discuss them briefly. So go ahead and take a couple of minutes to craft a vision statement. Remember, can have the what, where are we going, why are we going there? It doesn't need to have all of these things, but just think about that and write one for yourself. So if you're well on your way to crafting yours, then ignore my voice. I want to share a little bit about my own personal vision for my life. And over time, it has changed. I thought I had the perfect vision for myself, and it is still changing. It's changing and morphing as I get older and hopefully wiser. Hopefully. And I kind of alluded to it earlier, and that is that I want to make sure that I am always growing in all the elements of my life. And I guess the simple way would be mind, body, spirit. But I want to make sure that I am growing in every facet, every element of my life. And I've become less focused on I guess it's this is a vision statement, so not doesn't have to be super specific, but less focused on the outcomes and the outputs, being super specific there and more on something general. So I apologize if you're not completely done with your statement, but I think it's a good exercise, good thing for you to do, just to at least think about it and start working on something for yourself to help guide you as you go through life. Now, we're not going to do this, but if you would like to separately, you could think of it as homework or whatever you want to think of it as. You can either scan this with your phone or so this link is from a conference I did in Reno, Nevada. That's why it is Reno Leader is my shortened URL there. But go ahead and if you want to do it, then take a picture of this slide, pull that up on your phone or your computer, and you can do it later. I will describe briefly the how to interpret it in just a moment once I give enough time for people to take a picture of this. And at the end of the slideshow, I'll have a PDF that you can follow a link to get a PDF of this that you could print out and do hard copy of if you would like. That also has some more information on how to interpret it, how to interact with people who have different styles than you. So there's a few major categories on this questionnaire. There's 4. So if you mostly answer A, then you are amiable, and this shares how to several different features of this. Now the PDF I'm going to share has more detail, but I'll say I'm analytical. I guess it makes sense. So how to recognize, I'll use myself as an example. Seeks lots of data, asks lots of questions, and that's still that I'm working on. Questioning and being the inquisitive skeptic, and exploring, staying curious. Likes to be measured by activity and business that leads to results. Dislikes making an error, being unprepared, and I definitely, yep, that resonates. Best way to communicate is to provide lots of data and information for me to think about and make a decision. And I can't remember whose comment it was, but it sounds like maybe you and I are both analytical. Now some don't, they could be good leaders and they don't necessarily take a lot of time. So for example, if you're a driver, then you are action based and you like to make decisions and get things done quickly without necessarily having the best, the best approach, which we need some people like that. We need a little bit of all of these. For best results, create track for them. So this is if you have someone on your team and you know that they're analytical, you want to, I would say gamify. So create a track, create a ladder for them to follow to, achievements or whatever is going to really motivate them. I'm going to go quickly through this one as well. I will talk about the map of motivation. But for me, this model really is important. And it underlies, I think it underlies plan, do, check, act. So if you have any familiarity with management systems, or if you do in the future, they're all, not all, but most of them are built off of this model called the Deming cycle, where you plan, then you carry out the plan, you're going to evaluate yourself, and then you're going to improve, get better. That's what the act means. That cycle it can also be described by the GPS model. I like that it's a bit simpler, but basically, so I'm not going to do the questions, but the combat scenario. There's a former Navy SEAL commander I like to listen to on his podcast, but anyway, and he talks about this. So your location is determined by evaluation. And obviously, we're going to plan our target or our goal, wherever it is we want to get to. But we're going to have to create a roadmap. We have to figure out where we are at, where we want to go, and then the best path forward to getting there. I like to think of it in those terms. And then obviously, the act piece is kind of built into that. How do we get better? How do we move towards it? So this is an exercise you can do for that evaluation piece. Where am I at? What is my current location in relationship to my goals? We're not going to walk through this, but it's called a SWOT exercise. You list out, if we were to do it, you would think about and then list out your strengths, your weaknesses, and people like to point out this is all internal. And then opportunities and threats to your goals, and this would be external. And maybe we're a little bit backwards here. We are going to talk about goals briefly, but internal, if I could spell, and I'm apologize for my poor handwriting. So SMART goals are very important. We're going to look at a couple of examples briefly. You are likely familiar with them. If not, then you can look them up. I like this version over here because I like to have that accountable piece. And that was something that was mentioned about good leaders is taking responsibility, owning the mistakes and admitting, you know what, I was wrong. That is fine. You'll likely get more respect from people if you'll own your mistakes and say, I messed up, and this is how I'm going to work to make it better. That's going to get respect from people rather than trying to make excuses, for example. That's something I've been working on, not perfect at, but eliminating excuses and saying, just simply saying, yep, I missed the deadline. I messed up. This is what I'm going to do to try and fix it. So this is just an example of a SMART goal. We will reduce worker overtime by at least 30%. So that's the specific piece. It's very specific and measurable. We should be able to measure that. We have a time component. That's the T in the SMART goal. This is also, I'd say, part of this specific piece. And then the achievable and relevant are two other pieces. Now, I do suppose relevant is very important, even though it's not on my list. But we want to make sure that, remember, if we are trying to get somewhere, we want to make sure that our little goals along the way are actually moving us in that direction. Sometimes we measure things and we think these things are going to help us get to our goal, but they're actually moving us away. That's speaking of data and making decisions with data and evidence. Too often we make assumptions that a certain path is going to take us where we want to be, and that's wrong. I have a woodshop teacher who taught me what happens when we assume. I'm not going to go over his lesson, but I remember it, and I think it's right. So we're not going to do this, but I think it would be helpful for all of us to take some time to make sure that we have small goals that are leading us towards that vision of where we want to be and what we want to become. So let's talk about the map of motivation a little bit here to finish up. There's an interesting problem called the candle problem. Whoops. You may have heard of it. It's a psychology experiment, and it's been used for many different things. So the problem is this: you're given a box of matches and a box of tacks and a candle. And the goal is to attach the candle to the wall and light it and not have any of the wax get on the table. And this is it can be a tough problem. Some of you may be familiar with it and you know the solution, which we will reveal here. So people try different things. They try and maybe melt some of the wax on here so that they can sort of attach it. They try and use the tacks to tack the candle to the wall and then light it. But you're going to get wax on the table that way. So the solution is to take the container of the tacks and tack it itself to the wall and then put the candle on. And a simple problem could be difficult. It's difficult for many. With a relatively simple solution, but you have to think outside the box a little bit to solve it. So where this is relevant are the experiments that were done with motivation. So there are many experiments, many studies that have looked at this, and they, at least according to so this is from a TED Talk. I'll share the name here in a moment on the next slide, but at least all of the studies cited, there could be others that differ. All of the studies cited by this speaker had the same results essentially, very similar results, a lot of consistency, and that is they had a control group where there was no incentive, no reward to solve this problem the quickest. Then there was a group that had a medium-sized reward, it's usually a monetary reward, and then I'll say a higher reward, again, monetary reward. So it might be like $5 for the medium, $20 for the higher reward, something like that. What they found was that the fastest group was typically the control group. And the group that by far took the longest time to solve it was the group that was offered the highest reward. And it's interesting because a lot of times companies, organizations will offer monetary rewards for something, and we see it. I think I see it all the time. The idea that money or some sort of reward will produce motivation and a behavior change. And it can. I'm not saying it doesn't, but I'm saying that the evidence suggests otherwise. And in this gentleman's journey of trying to understand motivation and what leads people to change their behavior, including our own, where these three, I call it the map, he calls it the puzzle of motivation. But I took his, he had autonomy first. I rearranged this so that it would spell map because I like maps. But mastery is the desire to get better and better at something that matters. And that's related to our purpose here. So I talked about a ladder. We need some sort of ladder, and it doesn't necessarily involve money. It doesn't necessarily involve titles. It could involve those things, but we need something to give us the sense that we are progressing, that we are growing and getting better. We need something to do that, to help us feel like we are growing and making a difference, really. Autonomy is hopefully you've never had a manager who was a micromanager. I don't wish that on anyone. I've been lucky to not have someone like that, but a good leader is not a micromanager. A good leader gives autonomy, some freedom to not only direct your own life, but also I'm thinking in a workplace to figure out a solution on their own without directing every little aspect of the job. So and that applies to our lives as well. We need some autonomy to explore, to try and fail and learn as we work towards a solution to something. And failing is okay. It's okay to fail. You're not a failure unless you give up and you stop. And then purpose. So have something meaningful, have a meaning to our goal, to our work, to whatever it is we are working to achieve, yearning to do what we do in service of something larger than ourselves. If you, so I'm thinking of a supervisor, a manager, but this could be for us as well. It's important to build these three things into our life, into our job, so that we feel more motivated. And I 100% agree with people who say discipline is more important, and I agree. Discipline doesn't care about our emotions, how we feel. If we don't feel like going to the gym, discipline says, no, we're gonna get up and we're gonna go to the gym even though we don't feel like it. And that's going to help us grow. I 100% agree with that, but I do agree also that creating an environment to increase motivation is going to be helpful. It's going to help us do more and to grow more. So we talked briefly about good and bad leaders. These are two of the C's that are sometimes used. This is another C. The three C's or the five C's, I would add character, and that came out a little bit in our conversation. Character is one of the C's. They're different models people use for that, but it's important to have a vision, to know where we're going. It's important to be able to communicate that vision. We didn't have time for it, but there is a lot of communication, and the most important communication that is nonverbal. Nonverbal. So there was the idea of being a good example, good role model. A lot of that is nonverbal. You are communicating. If you most of the care that you show is shown. You don't communicate it with words necessarily. Now, so that is part of it, but a lot of that is in your actions, really. And then the GPS model I like is a simple model for growing and getting closer to our goals. And then the map of motivation, we have mastery, autonomy, and purpose that we should try and build into our lives and into our teams for those we work with and interact with. So just going to skip over that one. That was just a review of our objectives. And I wanted that to be more interactive. I really do appreciate hearing your thoughts and comments and feedback. It was great to have what we did. But so, and I appreciate that. Real quick. So this is the PDF for that leadership style exercise. If you would like to do it, and there's an interesting anecdote with many of the companies, and so mostly supervisors and some managers and even executive team members. After they would complete this exercise, they wanted a copy so that they could have their spouse do it, so that they could understand their spouse and how to communicate with their spouse. I thought that was interesting. Anyway, I think it is really though a useful tool, and I'm sorry we didn't have time to go over it. But one final thought, and then I will really open it up for questions. I do think I feel that leadership is an important characteristic for all of us to be developing. It does not matter what your title is. You can be a leader, and you are a leader. We can make a difference in the world through leadership by growing ourselves to be the best version of ourselves possible. Questions?
Well, thank you so much, Dr. Reed. That was amazing. I literally just scanned the QR code myself so I can do the leadership form style test as well. But again, guys, thank you so much for joining us for our Public Health Discovery Seminar Series with Dr. Rustin Reed. And please feel free to drop those questions in the chat or the Q&A.
You're welcome, Amanda Shell. Thank you for participating. Oh, thank you. I appreciate that. I'm sorry if I'm saying your name wrong.
Does anybody else have any questions?
You're welcome, Eden. Thank you. Just one, maintain being approachable and authority as a leader. That is a great question. That is a great question. So I'm just going to share the thoughts as they come. I will say I'm not necessarily an expert on leadership. Like I said, I consider myself a student of leadership. I think it's important to maintain a certain type of relationship. Let's say, for example, this is a supervisor and subordinate type of situation where you want to maintain that authority as a leader, but also be approachable. I had a manager, this was early on in my career, who said that you cannot be buddy with your subordinates. So she was my manager and I was one of the subordinates. And I thought, no, you could be friends with your superior. So I think she was right. I think I was right too, but to an extent. So I experienced the issue of that later on in my career, where I was pretty good friends with the supervisor, and he did not intend to pressure me to do something. He had changed positions and he wanted me to move. He wanted me to follow him to a new organization, and I felt pressured, even though he didn't go out of his way to make me feel pressured, but he was such a good friend that I felt that pressure, and I saw some of the wisdom in my manager's suggestions. And so I think it's important to get to know, if you're the supervisor, get to know your employees, ask them about their family. How's their family doing? The updates in their life, how things are going, but still keep, I would say, a little bit of distance there. You have to keep a little bit of that. and do all of the other things that we talked about. Lead by example, and you own it when you make a mistake. And sometimes you make executive decisions, and it has to be a certain way. It might be out of your control, but you show that you care. You show that you care, and that you're. And I guess maybe should have mentioned this first, but and you have to have that listening ear that was mentioned, an open door policy. Show that you listen and that you consider their comments, their feedback, even if you can't always implement it. They might have thoughts about how to do something. You can at least show that you did follow up, you looked into it, you cared about getting their feedback. But because of X, Y, and Z, my hands are tied. I can't, we can't do that. But I thought I think it was a great idea. If you have other great ideas, please bring them to me. So you have to show that, but still keep a little bit of an arm's length distance when it comes to that personal relationship. Hopefully that answered your question. Any other questions?
All right. If we don't have any more questions, we're going to end the Public Health Discovery Seminar Series. Again, thank you all so much for joining us for today's Public Health Discovery Seminar Series. If you have any questions, if you want to contact Dr. Reed, he does have his email on the screen. And they said, thank you for your explanation, Dr. Reed. But we do have his email on the screen, which is rreed3@tulane.edu. Again, thank you so much, Dr. Reed, for your seminar series. And you all have a wonderful day and a wonderful week.
Thank you.
Thank you.